SMT Nation, we are back. Nation, this article caught my attention, gave it a read, and I want to share some things from it with you, and then get your opinions and thoughts on it. You guys can comment down in the comment section at any point in this video. Titled, AT&T and Verizon Won't Stop Cutting Jobs. Let's talk about it here in this video. Link for the article in the description. Ways to support us can be found there as well. Please do like and share this video, subscribe if you're new here, and turn on the bell notification icon to never miss an upload from the SMT. All right, the reason why I think the author of this, Ian, made this article was he just observed Verizon make an employee move. What they're basically doing is looking to cut costs, and they went ahead and put aside almost $2 billion to pay off these severance packages for several long-time Verizon employees. These are long-standing employees that have been with the company for decades, right? Many, many years. And they're very well-paid employees. And then by doing this, the long-term is cost-cutting for Verizon. Not technically layoffs, but, you know, that's how the media spins stuff. But this is going to officially put Verizon with fewer than 100,000 employees, which hasn't been the case in a long, long time. Not really new to the industry, reducing headcount. This is something that the carriers do all the time. For example, after the T-Mobile and Sprint merger, T-Mobile made a concerted effort to lay off tens of thousands of employees. And, you know, they never replaced any of them. You know, for the most part, if you laid off 20,000, you maybe, brought back or repositioned, 10 or 15% of those. Right, but possibly through that that program they have, that Rural America program, and stuff like that. Maybe they added a few thousand, throughout the last couple of years, but there's still a net negative, especially when you think about all the network engineers that they no longer wanted to pay and have, right? Those types of things. AT&T has been shrinking their company for years, dating back the better part of 6 to 7 years since their mergers with Time Warner, so going from 252,000 down to 146,000, and it's probably a little bit lower. And the thing with AT&T is, after the pandemic, telling everybody to come back to work, they had several thousands of employees that moved away and left, the Dallas headquarter area, and they really shouldn't have. So they left. And then they were called back to the office, and they didn't want to come back. So there were voluntary layoffs, and there were actual layoffs, for employees that didn't want to come back. So there's been shaving within the industry, and it's interesting. I looked at some of these numbers. AT&T's annual revenues are down between 2017 and 2023. Verizon has gained, right, in annual sales. So you'd say, well, if you're gaining in sales and you've got less employees, well, that's a good thing, right? And then if you look at the productivity, and this one's an interesting metric, AT&T made $813.5 thousand in sales per employee. That's up from the 2017 number of $573,000. Verizon has grown from $811,000 to $1.2 million. So these companies are making more money per employee, which means that the employees have gotten more productive. I mean, if you're looking at it from that metric. And then I looked at this metric, and this is the operating margin. Verizon has fallen from 22 to 17%. Well, that's bad, right? It says here general and administrative costs have increased 9% to $32.7 billion. AT&T has done a little bit better, going from 13 to 19%. So that's encouraging for them, I guess. And their SG&A costs have reduced by 17%. So it's interesting to see how these two companies, maybe because they were in such different positions to start, and then have just improved it during that 5-year time span. But then kind of looking at other aspects and like expenses and wage inflation and those types of things, they're all part of this. I found this interesting here. There's the phenomena of bloat, or what David Graeber, an anthropologist, referred to as bullshit jobs. Over time, bosses unnecessarily accumulate subordinates who contribute little actual value. So if you get rid of the quote unquote bullshit jobs, what should happen is technically the company gets more efficient and more lean. They're jobs that they don't necessarily need to have employed, right? So, and I think that's what AT&T did a lot of, right? Do you need to have, 50 assistant directors or something? Like you could just shrinkage for positions you just didn't need. I think those are things that are happening. But with respect to less people and AI and all this, really what we've seen is we've seen a reduction in retail operations, and we've seen a reduction in retail employees at companies like Verizon, especially with customer care. They've done a lot of cost cutting there. AT&T has completely moved away from corporate store operations. T-Mobile has reduced their store number. There's been a lot of consolidation there, cost cutting in customer care, and they're all moving towards AI solutions to help steer customers deal through problems. There will continue to be shrinking of these workforces, and it's become part of the industry. I'm not an apologist for telco. I just know how these things go, and I'm not naive. But to be honest with you guys, these are big companies that make a lot of money, and I don't need to hear them complaining about them not making enough money. They pay increasing dividends to their shareholders, and that number continues to increase. Verizon increases dividends every year. AT&T has, like a 6+% dividend yield, and T-Mobile started paying a dividend yield, and they're doing share buybacks. You could talk about the shrinkage and you could talk about this reduced headcount at these companies, but at the end of the day, would they even really care to do this if it wasn't from the pressure from the shareholder, demanding improved free cash flows? I think about those types of aspects too, and they're going to do what's best for their companies, and they're going to make those decisions and reduce headcounts wherever they can. But I think something has to be said. We're all paying our bills, and these carriers have very systematically raised prices through different methodologies, from increasing the costs on rate plans to different types of fees, renaming them and adding new ones, and then changing plans that make them more money. And I mean, they're making more money than ever. You're looking at revenue increases, even if they are a small percentage. You're looking at profit margins. They're looking to optimize those things and reducing headcount. So everybody fighting the fight, trying to hold on to more of their ducats. Anyways, I would expect this continue in the future, maybe at a slower pace, but we should expect the companies to shrink their employee count over time. We'll revisit this in a couple of years and to see how things are going. What's your thoughts and opinions on this? Welcome down below. Y'all the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard.